Good afternoon, friends. Let's start today about the next part of the respiratory system, that is part 4 of the human respiratory system. In that, we are going to study the physiology of human respiratory system. We have already gone through the anatomy of the human respiratory system from the external part such as nostrils towards the internal parts such as lungs, bronchi, bronchioles, alveoli, alveoles, alveolus, etc. etc. So let's start today the breathing and exchange of gases. As you are observing the screen, the breathing and exchange of gases is the point that you have known from the birth. Okay, you don't have studied this point, but you know how to breathe. It is a kind of automated process. So what is actually breathing? Breathing is oxygen is utilized by the organisms, okay, through atmospheric air as an intake, and CO2 produced by the digestion of food is exchanged with this O2 at the respiratory system point alveoli through blood capillaries. So we basically what do here is we exchange the atmospheric oxygen with CO2. The oxygen is taken inside the blood cells such as RBC and bind to hemoglobin pigment present inside the RBC, while the CO2 is released inside the lungs to exhale it. Okay, so basically respiration is taking up of atmospheric air through which oxygen is taken inside the body, and whatever CO2 is produced as a waste after the nutrition digestion, that CO2 is exhaled through the nose. Okay, definitely this is the process of basic respiration. Now let's go towards the next thing that is given in 11th NCERT book. So let's read. As you have read earlier, oxygen is utilized by the organisms to indirectly break down nutrient molecules like glucose and to derive energy for performing various activities. The carbon dioxide, which is harmful, is also released during the above catabolic reactions. Yes, it is correct. Carbon dioxide is released outside and oxygen is taken inside. Okay. It is therefore evident that O2 has to be continuously provided to the cells, and CO2 produced by the cells have to be released out. Yes, because if CO2 resides inside the blood cells, it will block the taking of further oxygen and definitely block the digestion process and our life also. So this process of exchange of O2 from the atmosphere with CO2 produced by the cells is called as breathing according to NCERT 11th book, commonly known as respiration. So place your hands on your chest. You can feel the chest moving up and down. You know that is due to breathing. How do we breathe? The respiratory organs and the mechanism of breathing are described in the following sections of this chapter. Okay, definitely correct. If we put a hand onto our chest, we can easily feel that we are breathing. So we are exhaling also and we are inhaling also. When we inhale, the chest goes up due to the activity of lung air intake. Okay, and when we exhale, the chest somewhat gets flattened due to exhalation of air. So let's go towards the next point. The next point is respiratory organs. We have already gone through this from the nostrils to the lungs. So mechanisms of breathing vary among different groups of animals depending mainly on their habitats and the levels of organization. Lower invertebrates like sponges, coelentrates, flatworms, etc. exchange O2 with CO2 by simple diffusion over their entire body surface. So these organisms like sponges, coelentrates, flatworms can exchange gases O2 and CO2 through the entire surface of their skin. We cannot do this. We cannot breathe through our skin. Frogs also are able to do this along with sponges, coelentrates and flatworms. They can breathe through their skin. Okay. Then let's see, earthworms use their most cuticle, and insects have a network of tubes such as tracheal tubes to transport atmospheric air within the body. Special vascularized structures called gills are present in the fishes to breathe. Okay, are used by most of the aquatic arthropods also and mollusks also along with the fishes. Whereas vascularized bags called lungs are used by the terrestrial forms for the exchange of gases. So among the vertebrates, fishes use gills, whereas reptiles, birds and mammals respire through lungs. Then amphibians like frogs can respire through their moist skin also. Yes, frogs can respire through their skin also. Mammals have a well developed respiratory system. So let's see about next point. Respiration involves the following steps. These 5 steps are very much important if we are going to study respiration. The first step is breathing or pulmonary ventilation, by which atmospheric air is drawn in and CO2 rich alveolar air is released out. So where this CO2 rich alveolar air come to the alveoli? From the blood after the digestion of food. Okay, CO2 is produced. That CO2 is taken up as a waste and provided towards the alveoli through RBCs. RBC also have affinity towards CO2 as it is having affinity towards O2. Actually, the CO2 affinity for hemoglobin inside RBC is more as compared to the oxygen. So let's see, transport of gases by the blood. It is also there. Diffusion of gases such as O2 and CO2 across the alveolar membrane occurs. Then the diffusion of O2 and CO2 between blood and tissues also occur. Utilization of O2 by the cells for catabolic reactions and the resultant release of CO2, that is cellular respiration, that we have already dealt. Okay, so let's see. Mechanism of breathing. How we breathe. Breathing is basically divided into 2 kinds of steps. Inspiration and expiration. What is this inspiration? During which atmospheric air is drawn inside the lungs is known as inspiration. What is expiration? By which the alveolar air is released out through the nostrils by using lungs. Okay, then let's see, what is this? The movement of air into and out of the lungs is carried out by creating a pressure gradient between the lungs and the atmosphere. The inspiration can occur if the pressure within the lungs, that is intrapulmonary pressure, the pressure within the lungs is called as intrapulmonary pressure, is less than the atmospheric pressure. Okay, so what is inspiration? If the pressure inside the lungs is less than the atmospheric pressure, it is called as inspiration. There is a negative pressure in the lungs with respect to atmospheric pressure. Similarly, expiration takes place when the intrapulmonary pressure, that is the pressure inside lungs, is higher than the atmospheric pressure. When the lung pressure, that is inside the lungs, if the pressure is higher as compared to the outer atmospheric pressure, expiration occurs. Okay, then let's see about the next thing. The diaphragm and a specialized set of muscles, external and internal intercostals between the ribs, help in generation of such gradients. Inspiration is initiated by the contraction of the diaphragm, which increases the volume of thoracic chamber in the antero-posterior axis. Okay, the concentration of again the contraction of external intercostal muscles lifts up the ribs and the sternum, causing an increase in the volume of the thoracic chamber in the dorsoventral axis. The overall increase in the thoracic volume causes a similar increase in pulmonary volume. An increase in pulmonary volume decreases the intrapulmonary pressure less than the atmospheric pressure, which forces the air from outside to move into the lungs. That is inspiration, shown in figure A. Okay, you can see here in figure A, the air is entering inside the lung, the ribs and sternum are raised, the rib cage is somewhat stretched, and the diaphragm is contracted. So this all thing is denoting that there is an intake of air, means inspiration is going on. Then relaxation of diaphragm and the intercostal muscles return to the diaphragm and sternum to their normal positions and reduce the thoracic volume and thereby pulmonary volume. This leads to an increase in intrapulmonary pressure to slightly above the atmospheric pressure, causing the expulsion of air from the lungs. Yes, definitely correct. The pulmonary pressure when get higher than the atmospheric pressure, expiration process occurs, as we can see in this figure B. So here the air is being expelled from the lungs, the rib sternum return to original position, volume of thorax is decreased, Okay, this is the section of thorax, and diaphragm is relaxed and arched upwards as these arrows are showing to you. The ability to increase the strength of inspiration and expiration with the help of additional muscles in the abdomen. On an average, a healthy human breathes 12 to 6 times per minute. So you can definitely compare you are healthy or not. If you are breathing 12 to 16 times per minute, definitely you are healthy. The volume of air involved in breathing movements can be estimated by using a spirometer, which helps in clinical assessment of pulmonary functions. So let's see respiratory volumes and capacities. Tidal volume. What is TV? Tidal volume. Volume of air inspired or expired during a normal respiration is known as tidal volume. Whatever amount of air, volume of air amount is denoting here with volume of air you can inhale or exhale during a normal respiration. It is a tidal volume which is approximately 500 ml. Okay, that is a healthy man can inspire or expire approximately 6000 to 8000 ml of air per minute. A healthy man, if he is breathing 12 to 16 times a minute, he can take 6000 to 8000 ml of air per minute. That is approximately 6 liters to 8 liters of air. Yes, air as it is measured in volume, we can measure it in liters. 6 liter to 8 liters of air a minute a healthy man can inhale or exhale. Okay, so this is tidal volume. Inspiratory reserve volume. What is IRV? It is additional volume of air a person can inspire by forcible inspiration. Such as if you breathe normally, that is tidal volume. But if you are breathing forcibly, that much amount of inhaled or exhaled air is known as IRV. That is inspiratory reserve volume. Additional volume of air a person can inspire by a forcible inspiration. This averages approximately 2500 ml to 3000 ml. So add this to the original TV. You will get the total volume. Normal plus forcible. So 6 liter to 8 liter plus 3 liter means normally if you can go up to 6000 liters of air to inhale or exhale, now you can 6 liters of air, then if you forcibly do this, you can take up approximately 10 to 11 liters of air. That is TV plus IRV. Then let's see expiratory reserve volume. What is this? Additional volume of air a person can expire by forcible expiration. Okay. So inspiratory reserve volume is 6000 plus 3000. And what is expiratory? Again 6000 plus this 1000 ml. Okay, means 6 liter plus 1 liter definitely. So 7 liter is the forcible expiratory volume plus TV, and 11 liters is the inspiratory reserve volume plus TV. Okay, tidal volume. Now let's see residual volume. What is this residual volume? Volume of air remaining in the lungs even after a forcible expiration. This average is about 1100 ml, means 1 liter, means 1 liter. Okay. Then by adding a few respiratory volumes described above, one can derive various pulmonary capacities which can be used in clinical diagnosis. What is inspiratory capacity? Total volume of air a person can inspire after a normal expiration. You should write this down, and if you have the book of 11th NCERT, whether it is a older version or newer version, definitely you should go through this as a reading. Okay, so let's see inspiratory capacity. Total volume of air a person can inspire after a normal expiration. This includes the tidal volume and inspiratory reserve volume, that is TV plus IRV. That is, what is that much? 11 liters, that I have already told you. IRV plus TV equal to 11 liters. Then expiratory capacity. Total volume of air a person can expire after a normal inspiration. This includes tidal volume and expiratory reserve volume. What is this thing? Tidal volume and expiratory reserve volume. This is TV plus ERV, that is approximately 7 liters. That I have already told you from the previous definitions. Then functional residual capacity, FRC, volume of air that will remain in the lungs after a normal expiration. This includes ERV plus RV. Vital capacity, the maximum volume of air a person can breathe in after a forced expiration is known as vital capacity. This includes ERV, TV and IRV for the maximum volume of air a person can breathe out after a forced inspiration. The total lung capacity, total volume of air accommodated in the lungs at the end of a forced inspiration. This includes RV, ERV, TV and IRV or vital capacity plus residual volume. You can take a screenshot of this video for these definitions. You should write down these definitions to make remembered inside your mind. So let's see about the next thing, exchange of gases. Which gases we exchange through respiration process? Definitely O2 is taken inside the body and CO2 is exhaled outside the body. So alveoli are the primary sites of exchange of gases. Exchange of gases also occur between blood and tissues. O2 and CO2 are exchanged in these sites by simple diffusion, mainly based on pressure or concentration gradient. Solubility of the gases as well as the thickness of the membranes involved in the diffusion are also some important factors that can affect the rate of diffusion. Pressure contributed by the individual in a mixture of gases is called partial pressure and is represented as PO2 for oxygen and PCO2 for carbon dioxide. So what is pressure? PO2, that is the gas in a mixture of gases called partial pressure. Okay, individual gas in a mixture of gases. PO2 for oxygen, PCO2 for carbon dioxide. Partial pressures of these two gases in the atmospheric air and the two sites of diffusion are given in the table. Okay, so let's see the data given in the table clearly indicates a concentration gradient for oxygen from alveoli to blood and blood to tissues. Similarly, as shown in figure. Let's see. So respiratory gas is shown here, O2, CO2, atmospheric air 159, alveoli 104, blood deoxygenated 40, blood oxygenated 95, in tissues 40. So what is given here? Partial pressures in mmHg of oxygen and carbon dioxide at different parts involved in diffusion in comparison to those in atmosphere. Okay, so these are the pressures given in mmHg. O2 is 159 mmHg in atmospheric air. When it goes inside alveoli, it becomes 104 mmHg. When it goes inside the blood, it becomes 40 mmHg. When it goes inside the blood, it becomes 95 mmHg, and in tissues, it remains as 40 mmHg. What about CO2? In atmospheric air, it is 0.3 mmHg. Alveoli, when it enters in alveoli, it becomes 40 mmHg, then 45 mmHg in blood, which is deoxygenated, then in oxygenated blood it becomes 40 mmHg, and in tissues it is remaining as 45 mmHg. These are partial pressures of oxygen and carbon dioxide at different parts involved in diffusion in comparison to those in atmosphere. So these are the parts where these O2 and CO2, PO2 and PCO2 shows different kinds of pressures from atmospheric air to the tissues. Okay, so let's see next point. Here inspired air and expired air both are shown and the pressures are also mentioned here. So let's see. Alveolar air, PO2 104 mmHg, means this pressure, partial pressure for oxygen in alveoli is 104 mmHg, while for CO2, PCO2 is 40 mmHg inside an alveolus. Then how these CO2 and O2 are exchanged, these are also shown here. The CO2 means deoxygenated blood come into the heart. Which part of heart? Right atrium goes inside right ventricle and it is pushed towards the lungs through pulmonary artery, which becomes oxygenated through alveoli capillary network and again goes through pulmonary vein into the left atrium and left ventricle and supplied again to the body. So this is a cycle of carbon dioxide and oxygen exchange throughout the body. Here when the pulmonary vein takes up oxygenated blood, which has given up the CO2 to alveoli and taken up oxygen, it goes to heart, left atrium, and through left ventricle it goes to the other body parts where the O2 is supplied and CO2 is taken up as waste. Then this CO2 again goes to the right ventricle of the heart, right atrium and right ventricle of the heart, and goes through pulmonary artery towards lung to get oxygenated. It gives the CO2 there to alveoli and take up the oxygen. So here in systemic veins, the carrying deoxygenated blood, PO2, that is partial pressure for oxygen, is 40 mmHg and PCO2 is 45 mmHg. In systemic arteries which carry the oxygenated blood, carrying oxygenated blood, definitely correct. PO2, partial pressure for O2 is 95 mmHg and partial pressure for CO2 is 40 mmHg. Inside body tissues, these are exchanged. Okay, from the pulmonary vein, when the heart pushes it through systemic arteries, all the tissues get the oxygen through blood and throws out the CO2 to the blood, RBC, where the hemoglobin takes up the CO2 as a waste, and again it goes in the right atrium, right ventricle, through right ventricle, going through pulmonary artery in the alveoli of lungs. It get oxygenated, definitely correct. The CO2 is released and it takes oxygen again through pulmonary vein, it goes inside the heart, and this cycle continues. So this is diagrammatic representation of exchange of gases at the alveolus and the body tissues with the blood and transport of oxygen and carbon dioxide. Let's see next. So a gradient is present for CO2 in the opposite direction, that is from tissues to blood and blood to alveoli. As the solubility of CO2 is 20 to 25 times higher than the O2, the amount of CO2 that can diffuse through the diffusion membrane per unit difference in the partial pressure is much higher compared to that of O2. Correct? The affinity of CO2 is higher to bind to hemoglobin as compared to O2. It is about 20 to 25 times higher than O2. Let's see, the diffusion membrane is made up of three major layers as shown in this figure. The first, the thin squamous epithelium of alveoli. Second, the endothelium of alveolar capillaries, and the basement substance in between them. Okay, these are the three layers. Let's see. Alveolar wall, one celled thick, then basement substance and alveolar cavity. Okay, let's see the next thing. However, its total thickness is much less than a millimeter. Therefore, all the factors in our body are favorable for diffusion of O2 from alveoli to tissues and that of CO2 from tissues to alveoli. This is how the diffusion occurs. CO2 gets diffused inside alveolar cavity and O2 gets diffused inside the blood capillary through alveolar cavity. Here the exchange of gases occurs. Next, let's see the functions of the respiratory system according to Pearson biology book. Functions of the respiratory systems are given here. Provides extensive gas exchange surface area between air and circulating blood. Yes. Then filters, warms and humidifies air. Definitely correct. When we breathe air from outside atmosphere, it is having different temperature than our body temperature. So when we inhale air, the air is controlled and its temperature is changed as our body temperature. The respiratory system function is to move air to and from exchange surfaces of lungs. The respiratory system also protects respiratory surfaces from outside environment. For speech also it is important, and it aids in pH regulation also. Let's see the detailed view of alveolar membranes. The respiratory epithelium of the nasal cavity and conducting system is shown here, but we should go toward alveolar membrane view that we have learned through the book. So this is according to Pearson book, and we have seen according to the 11th NCERT book. See, this is the view of exchange of gases at alveolar level through blood capillaries, and this is according to the Pearson biology book. So here also three layers are shown. Type 1 cell epithelial cell in alveolar wall is shown here. Then alveolar basement membrane is also shown here. The capillary basement is also shown here, and endothelial cell in capillary wall is also shown here. So deoxygenated blood is going here where O2 is mixed and CO2 is taken up by alveolar airspace. This is according to Pearson's biology book. Then let's see pulmonary ventilation. Relies on gas traveling from high to low pressure. Boyle's law, pressure is inversely related to volume. Here, according to Pearson, what is inspiration? The inspiration is diaphragm and intercostal muscles contract. Okay, volume of thoracic cavity increases, pressure decreases, and air goes inside the lungs. Means definitely, according to NCRT book also it is correct, and according to Pearson book also it is correct. So the pulmonary pressure, when it decreases as compared to outer atmospheric pressure, inhalation occurs or inspiration occurs, taking air inside occurs. What is expiration according to the Pearson biology book? Diaphragm and intercostal muscle relax, NS stimulus stops, volume of thoracic cavity decreases, pressure increases, elastic recoil of tissues occur, and air gets outside of the lungs. Means pulmonary pressure inside the lungs increases as compared to the outer atmospheric pressure, and the air is exhaled outside. That is CO2 is exhaled outside. Okay. So the inhalation and exhalation is shown here, and how the lung contract or expand, it is also shown here. The diaphragm position is also shown here while inhalation and exhalation. So as you can see, the lungs generally contract while exhaling. Okay, and the diaphragm goes upward. But while inhalation, the lungs expand and the air goes inside, due to which diaphragm goes downside, according to Pearson's biology book. Then let's see the role of different muscles as shown in the Pearson's biology book. So this is muscles of inspiration and muscles of expiration. So end of expiration is shown here, end of inspiration is shown here, where sternomacluter muscles are shown here. Then various things also shown here. Internal intercostals are shown here, abdominal muscles are shown here, which are muscles of expiration. Then external intercostals, diaphragm is also shown here, which is observable inside this rib cage in dark red color. Then pectoralis minor is shown here, scalens are shown here, clavicle is shown here, which is cut. Then same thing is shown here about the end of inspiration. Now let's see modes of breathing. Respiratory movements are classified by pattern of muscle activity into quiet breathing and forced breathing according to the Pearson's biology book. Now let's go back towards the next thing. The thing is respiratory rates and volumes. Here we can see respiratory system adapts to changing oxygen demands by varying the number of breaths per minute, that is respiratory rate according to Pearson's book. The volume of air moved per breath, that is tidal volume according to Pearson's book. Definitely you should go through NCRT 11th and 10th book, because in Pearson biology some definitions are given different according to the NCRT book. So this is the graph of tidal volume, resting volume, inspiratory reserve volume, inspiratory capacity, etc., etc. So we will end this part 4 of respiratory system here. We will meet back in the part 5 of the human respiratory system in the next video.